welcome to another episode of the Adventures in Advising podcast. This is episode 112 and serves as our last episode of 2024. So a couple months back, I was scrolling through LinkedIn and saw Brody Broshears posted an article from Inside Higher Ed about how AI can address advising challenges. And Brody posed the question, how does advising leverage generative AI and evolve to enhance the student advising relationships and interactions? So I thought maybe this is a continued topic to discuss. So to guest host this episode, let's welcome back Brody Broshears from Illinois State University. Brody, good to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for this interview. And so I'm going to leave it to you to get us started and introduce your guest.
Yeah, will do. You know, when Matt asked me to do this, I said, I'm not really an expert in AI. I'm just really interested in this topic, but I know an expert that I've met here recently on my campus at Illinois State University. And so to help us unpack AI and academic advising, we're joined by Dr. Roy Magnuson, Illinois State University's Director of Emerging Technologies for Instruction and Research. What I think is really cool is you're not just that, you're also a seasoned faculty member in the School of Music, but have really spent the last several years kind of as a visionary leader in integrating some of these cutting edge tools into teaching, research, and creative practice. I know you've done some work here at ISU specifically related to AI, so we're going to get into that as well. But you've spearheaded initiatives that help educators and researchers harness AI, mixed reality, other advanced technologies to transform education. Welcome, Roy. We're glad to have you.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks, Brody.
Awesome. So we chatted a couple of months ago, and I think it's always great to kind of start with the origin story. So what was your interest in AI, kind of your entry into AI, and maybe speak to your discipline-based kind of entry into AI? I think that's really helpful for our audience.
Yeah, sure. So it's weird. I mean, I'm a composer. I have 3 degrees in writing acoustic music. So why am I having this conversation? I always feel like I have to contextualize myself, but it is kind of getting at this sort of larger issue, I think, that we're facing in higher education. So yeah, I mean, I've degrees in writing music. My whole background's in writing acoustic music primarily. I did my graduate study at Illinois. And if you know anything about that music school, it's the oldest electronic music studio in the Western Hemisphere. So it's a very big electronic music space. I kind of got interested in tech and art at that point. And then that sort of percolated as I was, beginning my time teaching at Illinois State as a tenure track faculty member. And I got really interested in VR over that portion of time and, started essentially just Googling, like, what would it be to make VR stuff? And I was starting from nothing. I was downloading Unity and making software, and time is crazy. You spend 6,000 or 7,000 hours doing that. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'm making apps for the Air Force and for hospitals. And because it's kind of an interesting space right now. I mean, VR has been around for a long time and in a lot of ways parallels AI. It's been around for a long time, but it's such an emergent space and there's so many different things happening. And there's this great opportunity, I think, for anyone who's interested in their background, they're curious, they want to try to do something, make something. There's a lot of opportunity right now. And as I said, me talking to you as a person that, again, has no formal training in anything that I've mentioned so far, certainly not AI, I am the existential threat for higher ed, right? It's that the information is there. If you get curious and you want to put in the time and you want to, take some formal, kind of training online, maybe some LinkedIn Learning or Udemy classes or whatever it is, right? You can get a lot of the objective data, just this is how you do it. This is how you use the software. This is what this is. This is this, right? And that we as an institution are grappling with this, that is what the world is right now. And it's a beautiful thing. It's great. There's this huge democratization of knowledge and access is becoming so frictionless. And AI is accelerating that, right? Because it's this, means in which anyone through their own language can begin to infer understanding about anything. And we as a concept, are forced with this moment where we have to adapt. We've got to figure out, okay, what do we do? How are we nimble? How are we having added value for students? And so that's a long way of introducing who I am, but it's also what my gig is right now at ISU is around that, having these conversations in both the research space and the instruction space.
Yeah, let's get to let's help the audience kind of understand the formalization of this interest into the work that you're now doing at Illinois State. I think I was introduced to you kind of as you were serving as a provost fellow. Can you speak to that work and then how that's transitioned into what you're doing right at this moment?
Yep. So for the 2023-24 academic year, I had the opportunity to serve as what ISU calls a provost fellow. These are a number of people that get some course release time at the institution to work with our provost and her staff to solve a problem. And you essentially just put forth an application of something that you see as an issue or you're curious about and you think the university needs more time on, right? And I happened to be on sabbatical in the spring of 23. So 2 months after ChatGPT released. And, it's like nuclear bomb was dropped on higher ed. It's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Yeah. I'd always kind of followed AI, but I was not, again, I'm not like a machine learning person or a computer science person. But I had known about its like general arc through the lens of VR and a bit through music, because there's generative music applications and things like that. But I got really curious about it, obviously, because I was doing all these sabbatical products and like researching it and playing with tools. And at the same time that I was on sabbatical, the call went out to be a fellow. So I applied to this position with our provost and said, I don't know if this is what you're even looking for, but this stuff really scares me and I don't think we can get it wrong. So do you want me to do this? And we had a really great conversation where she's like, yeah, it scares me too. And I don't know what we're doing. And it's been great, to be in the conversations amongst administrators and then, through that process, faculty, advisors, staff about, okay, what is this? Like who are we, right? We are both threatened and not threatened. Like we think this is trying to come for us, but really it's not attacking any outcomes of classes. It's not attacking anything. It's just changing the process it's changing the process of how we do our jobs, right? And that was fascinating. And that like led into the position I'm in right now, working as the director of emerging tech, where I'm still doing a lot of the similar things, working with similar people from that role, but also kind of, more broadly looking at application of research and, external partnerships.
Yeah. So maybe expand a little bit on exactly what you've been charged to do. I know that you're kind of overseeing this. I think this is useful for folks who might be listening, right? Like the idea that there's a committee now kind of focused on governance and tools. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I was reminded we were on a call with a vendor the other day and we were, kind of just, it wasn't really complaining. We were just talking about like, oh my gosh, I feel like we're just like a car with three wheels and we're like spinning in circles. And this vendor said like, look, man, we talked to tons of higher ed schools. Y'all are doing the same thing. Like, it's just like everyone is just trying to figure out what is happening. And that committee came out of my conversations with the provost staff. Specifically Cooper Cutting, who is an AVP here, sort of my point of contact when I was in the provost office. And that committee for the responsible use of AI was sort of us just codifying, like, look, we need to like get people together in a room. We need to have this formalized. We need, all the kind of institutional protections around that this is like time that's recognized by the university, that you should take, the amount of time you're reviewing documents and looking at tools and all of this. So that's kind of what we're doing is there is this group that is cross-disciplinary. It's across all areas of the university, reports to the provost and the president. It's co-chaired by our CIO, Charles Adamala, and Cooper Cutting, the AVP that I mentioned, who are like totally different perspectives on this so that we can try to take both a measured and very, institutionally sound approach, right? And do what universities do really well. They can just like it's very deliberate and all of that. Like that's institutions are awesome about that. We have tons of great thinkers and we can debate and come to this is like the distilled thing that is us. But we also have to have levers to pull where it's like this tool came out yesterday and it's like threatening half the classes on campus right now because someone put a TikTok out about it and now our kids are using it. And it's like, okay, we also have to be able to address that, right? And it can't. And this is where it gets really nuanced. It can't just be block it, right? Like we can't necessarily do that because it's effective, but maybe too easy, right? There's a nuanced approach that we're trying to wrap our heads around. And as a larger institutional identity crisis, that's partly what that committee's doing.
Yeah, I know you kind of did this road tour where you went across campus and spoke, had this PowerPoint presentation. It was fascinating, right? Really enjoyed it. And I know that you've given that talk now many times to campus leaders and other guests. I know that you spoke to the Midwest First Year Conference. You're here today. Maybe unpack kind of in a briefer response, kind of the tenor of that hour-long presentation. Like what's the real takeaway from that session that you do?
So it was a presentation, again, from my perspective, right? I would couch the discussion always like, what, same way I introduce myself here, like, why am I talking to you? Like, I am not a computer scientist. We have people that have multiple degrees in machine learning, like, and study neural nets and stuff on campus. Like, why are they not talking to you, right? And there's lots of reasons. Like, they're doing research, right? Like, they're obsessed with this stuff, right? So the perspective of me coming at this from as a non-native, I think was very important. I'm like, I'm learning this stuff in the same way that many people are. I'm trying to synthesize it and look at it for those folks who are not, like, fire hosing this information all the time. So it was like that. And then the larger arc was like, well, what is AI? Where is it going and what can we do? And the big takeaway at the beginning was like, this is not new, man. There's nothing new about what's happening. Large language models and neural nets, it's like the 80s, like it's been going on for a long time. There's been these ups and downs, and there's sort of this confluence of stuff that has come together between compute power and some like realizations with algorithms, and the transformer architecture and all the stuff. Like stuff is overlapping, and we're like, oh, deep learning is really powerful, like, which we've known for a while, but it's like everything is linking and locking in at this moment, and that's having this explosion, right? Through natural language, we're able to query stuff. And so the arc of the talk is like, this is what's happening. And then it gets really dark because like you kind of frame everything as like this dystopic, kind of moment. And it's very easy to do that. And I did it intentionally because people know that. We see sci-fi and we see you can project the end of this arc. It's really easy. It's Terminator or like whatever. But they don't make sci-fi about all the good stuff, right? There's so many amazing opportunities from generative AI, like large language models that we aren't considering. Access to tutors and to like advisors and changing what that looks like. I think is a great great thing we need to be exploring. But just like diagnostics, things are trained on multimodal things like audio and images. There's tons of studies coming back that it's like speeding up diagnostics and lowering the cost, and you're able to get people out where they can take a picture of a skin tag and, the middle of rural North Dakota and know if it's cancer in like 5 minutes. It's like, let's transformative. I mean, this is like really powerful stuff, right? And they don't, again, there's no sci-fi book about like this AI that, cured cancer and global warming, like as a potential top end in the same way that the potential top end of like, well, it annihilates humanity.
Which is scary. Like, that is scary.
It's certainly super scary. I mean, like there's lots and lots of discussion about that. And when people even like say, well, I mean, someone got like a 30% chance of destroying humanity, it's like, I mean, what are you talking about, man? Like 30% is like, that's real. That's a number. So again, I don't know if that's true. It's like, there's lots of discussion around this, right? So that's the arc of the talk is that, look, there's nothing magical about AI that we haven't known for a long time. It's just this sort of confluence of stuff and natural language and being able to query it quickly. And ChatGPT was this like flashpoint of like, it's a website, right? Just go. And people realizing how powerful that is for researchers and teachers and all sorts of folks. So it's like an access thing, it's a user experience thing, and the arc from there is unknown to an extent. We were continuing to see the tools grow. The growth is still happening at what seems to be exponential pace. We'll know soon-ish if that's like going to continue, and if it does continue, then yeah, things are going to look very different.
But I know in our discussions, I think one thing that maybe we can agree on is we're not going backwards, right? Anymore, no. Right? Like this is the deal. It's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah. It's people rightfully point at all of these companies and they're like, is that a Ponzi scheme? Like, I mean, like what,
Yeah.
OpenAI is like worth 150, I was already right, 157 billion, I think, as of this week. I think that's the number. And they take in like 500 million a month in revenue or something. Like it's something really low, and they're hemorrhaging money. And it's like, what is this? Like, this is not sustainable. And that's absolutely correct, right? People are betting and like trying to like project out like, all the stuff. The issue is that many of those naysayers, they'll point to OpenAI or they'll point to whomever, right? And they'll say this tool doesn't work. And it's like, yeah, but the concept works. The concept is not going away, right? At the very worst possible scenario, and I would also say, for me, preferable, at least in the near term, is that everything plateaus. Say things implode, like OpenAI goes down, we find out it was a money laundering scheme, whatever. It's all fine. Like generative AI is a concept that is out the door, man. Like it is just going to get faster, cheaper, easier.
Yeah.
Right. And there's too many people that are doing it. It's too clear that is the arc. Again, completely separate of what Google or Elon Musk or OpenAI or whomever is doing, right? It's not going away.
I can really appreciate your non-native approach to the topic of AI and some of the work that I wouldn't describe as secondary to the role that you play as a faculty member in this a music faculty member. But I spent time about 10 years ago kind of doing the same thing with the idea of happiness and meaning making, and have really tried to kind of think about employee engagement. What do you say to folks maybe who are afraid, right? Like, I feel like that just digging in and learning, like this deep learning that you mentioned, is really valuable. And it doesn't take any special skill. It just takes a commitment, right? Can you speak more to that?
Literacy is the number one thing. Like I said it over and over again, is just be curious. Go and play with these tools. If you're afraid of them, go play with them. And if you play with them and you read about them and you're exploring, and when I say play, I mean, like, I also offer, like, I'll help you. Like, I'm a coach. Like, I'll scaffold things for you and teach you, read in your discipline, or just, be curious, right? That you need to learn to know what it can do and what it can't. And that in an institution, especially a research, a group like a university, there's huge value in saying, like, look, this is terrible for what my role is. And then you should be sharing that out, right? Please, like, share, like, why you believe, this is, maybe not applicable or even destructive for taking into your workflow or your space, classroom research or whatever. On the flip side, like the literacy is so important, because especially, these generative models, again, a ChatGPT, which I'll use as like the Xerox of AI. It's like, a concept, right? But say ChatGPT, the only people that know how to use it at the highest level are the people who are subject area experts, and everyone is a subject area expert. So it's going to hit everyone in their position, your job, your teaching, your research, whatever it is, like literally everyone. And that it is, I believe, our responsibility as just like employers and humanity in general, is to teach and to empower and to show, like, look, this can do X, Y, and Z for you. Or ask, I guess, like, what can it do? And people report out it does X, Y, and Z. And then we're in the space where people are asking for ROI. Like, well, how does the investment in X tool at this many dollars bring back X dollars? And the problem is it doesn't, because we don't know. Because we can say, oh, this tool saved me 2 hours a week. And it's like, wow, that's 5%. That's amazing. Like 5% over 1,000 people, it's $40 an hour. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, it doesn't, right? It just saving 2 hours is not adding anything if your job stays the same. And that's the moment, right? It's like, okay, we need to figure out what these tools do, and then figure out how you adapt. And now what are you doing, right? And there's tons of paths from there. And I think this is where the real beauty comes, right? That it's not just that, it can be as simple as you have more time. And I think there's real value in that, especially like on employee satisfaction. Like, you can go to the gym, or you can go exercise more, you can go for a walk, right? That's all great. I'm not saying like we should like always be pushing for max effort, but if we're really looking at like there's a strong demand for ROI, it's going to have to be this self-analysis and say, oh, wow, all this stuff over here I would never, ever have had time to do. I'm going to do it now. Right. And now all of a sudden it's like, oh, we added like half an FTE or something. It's like, geez, like that's a tremendous amount of like, improvement to what we're able to do in our positions, to say nothing of like the complete reinvention of like what an advisor is. And I think that's like a really important and healthy discussion to have about like what those roles should and could look like if you're able to trust like some of this automation.
Yeah, let's talk more generally, and then we can get into some of the specifics. But I know you're really speaking to a personal responsibility to learn more, right? And I think getting people to kind of embrace that is always challenging. But let's look at the institutional level of commitment. How do you think schools, universities can ensure that faculty, academic advisors, other support staff are equipped to work effectively with AI tools?
Yeah, I can certainly speak probably I'll speak from the faculty side, because I'm learning in a staff position at this point, that it's very different. Like I'm learning like what it means to be, a civil servant or whatever in an institution is different than a faculty brain. So I'll frame this from the faculty, though I'm happy to have discussions from the other sides, but it's again kind of new to me. More from a faculty side, there needs to be the encouragement that this is something that is worthwhile to you, right? That this is this time spent is valued institutionally, right? Because that's the number one concern I think with faculty is like, well, I have so much to do. Like, I got all these things I got to do, and you're asking me to take on more, service load or whatever. I've got to research.
I think advisors say the same thing.
Yeah, and it's just, I'm learning I don't know how to frame it correctly from like the staff side, because the silver bullet for faculty, and again, I'm speaking from my perspective at ISU, is that you can always add like additional pay, like maybe weekend time or something like that, or whatever, right? You get grant funding to do the stuff, but that's not the case necessarily with others. So like, it's easy to say, well, there's more money, you can go do it. Do you want to get more money, right? So, and that's fine. Like money is encouraging, right? But I think the actual discussion is that it's valued, right? The institution values it. This time that you're spending on it is valued, and you can report that time spent, and that people are like, yeah, you're just exploring AI and you're figuring out how to get it into your teaching, research, and service and your life in general. And that we, in whatever mechanism that is, tracked or evaluated, say, great job towards, again, faculty, maybe promotion, tenure, and all those things. And then there has to be like, backstopping there. So it's access to tools that amounts to, people putting up money for funding. It's also staff who are working on the back end to support these things, because it's not just magically going to happen. There's like people that have to look at logs and talk with vendors and all this stuff. So there is a bit of like buy-in, I think, for this idea of like creating like an institutional support mechanism or just infrastructure or whatever you want to call it. Like, and I think everyone is kind of racing to figure out what that would look like around AI in particular. But it is sort of a larger cultural understanding that perhaps things that are seemingly quite disconnected from your reality have significant value, right? And again, this is a moment to look at AI and special ed, or AI and sociology, or AI and music, to say, no, please go learn about that, because it is going to impact you in every possible way, and tell us.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I think that what I've seen and what I've read is that folks who understand the power of AI are now using AI and trying to learn as much as they can, trying to find ways to save time. But my initial thought, and what most of what I'm reading is that when we start to look at kind of a role like an academic advisor or someone in the rank and file within an institution, maybe a service area, that there's been reluctance to really engage in these tools. How do we help folks kind of in those spaces get going, right? Like, mm-hmm. I know for me, right, it's really about trying to articulate the value, but it seems to still be an issue.
Yep. I think it is a bit of like, there's an extent of like build it, they come, like make the thing and like create, that's where like the infrastructure that we don't necessarily always have those places and spaces for people that are like, no, come and explore. Like, this is well supported and you're not, like, this is not something you shouldn't be doing. It's culturally what you should be doing. I do think explicitly making time, and this is where I'm learning about the whole other side of the
That's
university,
great.
is of telling people, you have part of your load to figure this out for us. And it doesn't have to be as like demonstrative as that. It's like, you can ask, like, who's curious about this stuff? Like, who are your champions? And you'll get people who are like, I play with ChatGPT all the time at home. It's like, great. You now have 7 hours a week, right? What I need you to do is X, and to share that out, because we need, again, it's like the doers, like the people that are doing it need to be the ones that are feeding it up, because it can't come top down. Because again, if I'm theoretically one of the people trying to figure out what we do at ISU, I have no idea what an advisor is actually doing. I can think of things I think would be really interesting, but they're going to know, wow, this would be great. I do this here and this here and this. They need to share that out after exploring it and getting, sort of the real hands on the tools, and like saying, this was great, this was hard. Does this do this? Could we do this? I saved 5 hours, and then this is the tricky part, right? There needs to be a mechanism in place where that can then be like codified, or at least like go from this kind of nascent, hey, we were playing with these things, and around like, figuring out how to do it in a way that works with data protection and privacy and FERPA laws and things like that. How can we then take that data and say, we want to move it to here, and build something or find a product that then does exactly this, but also is extendable to other things? That thing, like this step, is really hard. Like, it's really, really challenging.
Right.
And it requires either intense investment in personnel, or maybe like an adaptability, because like what we find and what we want to do is not necessarily always going to be an off-the-shelf product. It's going to be better at some things, worse at some things. And that's kind of where I find myself right now. It's like we're in this kind of moment where we know people are using it. We know they're doing interesting things. We know there's great possibility, yet we do feel like a car with three wheels, because we're like driving in circles trying to figure out like, well, what's the path, right? Do we build it? Do we like hire people to make it internally? Do we go out and spend all that money on contracting? Do we, try to find things that are integrated directly into your like advising software? And then it changes every, like 45 minutes, right? So like,
Right.
like it's also changing constantly.
Yeah.
So that's not a great answer, I think, but other than, it is about like curiosity and rewarding that like culture, right? That people they should be doing it, and it's encouraged, and they should be excited about it.
Yeah, I think Walt Whitman, right? Like Ted Lasso, be curious, not judgmental, is a way to kind of focus there. But I think even more so, right? To me, when I talk to academic advisors across the country, at least this fall, when you mentioned AI, I think when you mentioned that to academic advisors, and we talked about this when we spoke a couple months ago, right? There's this fear, right? That AI is going to get it wrong. When students start using AI to say, develop their plan of study, right? The 4-year plan of study, right? And so I think there is this fear that they're going to get it wrong. But I think your response was really useful. I know that when ChatGPT got released, the first thing that I did was go right to ChatGPT, and I said, I'm an undergraduate student majoring in psychology. Develop a 4-year plan for me to graduate from Illinois State University. And it was wrong. And we talked about that a little bit in our discussion in September. What do we say to advisors when that's the case? Like, how do we move past that initial piece? Because I've done that now recently, and it's way less wrong. In fact, it looks pretty good, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's my first comment was going to be, I think it's a liminal space. Like, I think it's going to actually be quite good. Like it will probably do that work really well, especially given the constraining it and access to data and correct system prompting and all this stuff. Like, you can make it do what you want, more or less, and limit it from doing things that it shouldn't do. And that's something we're experimenting with, like right now. So talking about this with someone right before this meeting about, okay, we're testing things behind the scenes and they're protected, and we're all this stuff, and we're seeing like, well, how accurate is it? Like, is this something we can even reasonably in the next like 18 months think about, like, using with some impunity. Like, we don't have to constantly be checking it to see if it's wrong, right? There may never be a state or a time where it's 100% accurate, right?
That's
However,
right.
and I say this as someone who is a human, we are not 100% accurate, right?
No,
Like, we make mistakes all the time.
all
And
the
this is like a really important thing for us as humanity to get our heads wrapped around. There are already diagnostic bots that are more accurate than doctors at 100th the price. Yet we don't use them because they're wrong. They're more accurate than humans,
right.
and we still don't use them, right? We have to, at some point, we need to figure out what is the level of comfort we have with tools like this, knowing it is going to be wrong, right? Yet your advisor could tell you the wrong number one day. I mean, they were just tired. I don't know. They had a headache. They
Yeah.
said, psychology 310 and they meant 292 or something. And it's like, that happens probably every day, right? And it's not, again, it's fine. It's fallible. We fix it, whatever. We have to come to a position where we're okay with that because, and this is like the great opportunity, right? It's the market inefficiency, whatever way you want to look at it, is what is an AI like that and the human? And that is like profound. I mean, I could solve so many problems with wellness and mental health and DFW rates or whatever you want to look at an institution where these people, the human beings, have a significant cognitive load like taken off of them, where they're getting readouts or reports of things flagged that students are talking to the bot about, so they can go specifically to those students. And then maybe the rest of the time they're focusing on the students they know, right? These are my at-risk people, and I'm taking them to lunch, or I'm going on a walk with them. I'm going to their whatever place, their shared space that they can go and meet with them, and be a human being, be a champion for them, be all the things. I mean, I think people get into advising to want to do. They want to help people. They want to be that person that makes sure you get through this process. That I know, having friends who are advisors, that's just unrealistic because they'll have huge caseloads, and you're not doing that because it's so much to do. That is a future, right? It's real.
Yeah.
And we should strive to go there and figure out what it is and show it, and the amazing power that future could have. Again, I really believe in that. I do think we are, 2022, November 2022 to December 2024, right, is 2 years. And we've gone from it's terrible to, well, it basically does it. I mean, and what's another 18 months where we're testing this and then rolling it out? It's like, oh, it's like, yeah, it 100% accurate. It's fine. It does all the algorithmic cognitive work that an advisor would have done. It's like, great. That is not, and I can't stress this enough, the open door to get rid of humans. That is the wrong path. There are tons of studies that show people don't want that. What they want is the combination.
Yeah.
They want 2 a.m, I want to set up my thing because I'm awake, and I do all the work I would have done with my advisor, would have done the back and forth or whatever, figuring out my classes, asking things. And then you're able to have a one-on-one follow-up or something else, or you always have this lever you can pull to go to a human, ask questions, and I think it'd be amazingly powerful.
I think the I think about COVID, right, and the move to virtual, right, and where we were doing appointments, right, through mediums like this, and those were valuable during that time. But I think even the transition back to in person, right, and now when at Illinois State, at least within University College, for example, students want to see their advisors in person, right? They want to interact face to face. The majority of our appointments are set up in that way, right? I think there has been a trend back, but for advisors who, and I know this does pop up, right? Eventually, folks are going to say, "Well, won't AI just replace?" Do you see risks to relying on AI for decision making in areas that involve nuanced human judgment? To me, I think just use it as a tool to make your human interactions better, right? Rather than it being a threat to the way that students might want to use the tool.
Yeah, there should be a human in the loop. I mean, we're a long ways off from, any kind of significant high stakes decisions being made by an AI. That's my opinion. I'm sure people have other opinions. In Illinois, there's legislation that's being passed specifically to that. I mean, that's what it's getting at, right? Is that AI cannot be used to solely make decisions about many things, for public workers and students, right? And I agree. It's like, it is wrong. It's biased, even though it's getting better, but it makes mistakes, right? And a human should be there to have the nuanced sort of like, look at it, right? That said, going back to what I said before, like there is going to be a point where it is faster, cheaper to an order of magnitude and just basically accurate, right? Yes, it will make mistakes. Like, where do we draw that line? There is going to be a line, right? We're going to have to say, like, look, this is too much of an opportunity to do this. That is not the replacement of a human, right? It's a reevaluation of what that person's job is. And that is a massive opportunity, right? Where you have these people that are skilled and understand how to talk to people, are like the institutional knowledge, they know the humans, where the imagination should just go crazy about like, what would we do if, 50% of your time was back? I don't know. Again, I'm throwing out numbers. Like I have no idea what cognitive load would be off, but it could be really just completely fantasy land, like dreaming up, but a very real reality in 3 years. Like that, I think is even maybe conservative. Like that's very possible. What does that look like? And how like transformative, right? For students, for recruitment, retention, for just personal well-being, for what your life feels like as an advisor. You have more satisfaction. You're not spending all of your time looking at fields and clicking boxes and moving things from X to Y and sending emails. You are looking someone in the eyes and talking to them about their concerns and advising them on, I mean, why would you take that psych class over this class? Oh, have you ever thought to ask the professor? Like any of those things, right? To spend more of that human time. The paradox, right? Or the sort of like, what's really hard to wrap our heads around is that the more a technology like this is relied upon, the more human we should become, right? And that's super powerful, but it's also very dangerous because it could very easily not do that, right? That you should remove algorithmic work from your life if the algorithm can do it at a high level. You shouldn't have to cancel your Comcast and sit on a phone or in a chat, right? It's an AI. Like they're going to have an AI that talks to your AI. It's got all of your information on your phone. Just go do it, right? Okay, great. And it takes 20 seconds, right? Because it's all just decision tree, this, not this, whatever, right? You should do something else with your time, right? You should do something human with your time. And that's really amazing. However, right, there's this overwhelming sense of urgency to not do that, to look for efficiency, to look for cost savings, right? And that's where we have to be really, really, persistent about the added possible value of this technology is where it augments humanity, and that is true. I think if there's a truth with this, I believe in it. It's that.
Yeah, the one thing that I'm always fascinated by, I'm an administrator. I haven't carried a caseload in quite a while, right? But I think about even just the 30-minute appointment or the 45-minute appointment, right? Using AI to help us balance efficiency and the empathy that comes with every single individual student that we come into contact with. To me, it feels like this is just a tremendous opportunity to develop those skills, whether we're using AI to help us do that or not, right? Like, I think asking the meaningful questions, right? Getting at what the students' goals really are and having those discussions rather than helping the student decide whether they want to take class from 9:30 to 10:45 on Tuesday and Thursday or from 10 to 10:50 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, right?
Right. I think that's a solved problem. Again, not to belittle like advisors, but like that's a kind of a solved problem at this point. Again, and I think everyone has these things in their jobs, whether or not we want to be really critical of them or not. Like there are tons of things we do that these tools already or in the very near future will they're just going to do, and they do it at a very inexpensive level, and they do them in a nuanced way, and they do it in 100 languages, right? I mean, like it's just the conversation, like the humanity of, we're literally right now you can exist in a world where you can do real-time voice translation between anyone in any language to any language, like sub 100 millisecond latency. Within the next like 5 years, decade at the outside, we'll have wearable AR technology where you're they're doing the same thing. You're just looking at each other. You're not looking at a phone. You're not waiting. It is just real time. See the person, hear their voice cloned in your ear in whatever language you want to hear, and vice versa.
That's
like
great.
It's going to happen because it's like you can see it now, and it's like it is just a question of like, you know, latency. They're all solvable problems of coding and physics. It's like that's where we're heading. And what that does for the human to human interaction, we don't really know, because like we've never existed like that as, you know, dumb monkeys, right? Like we're just like we don't know what will happen when language is not a barrier. But if we can truly trust that we have like, you know, the Star Trek Universal Translator in a position like an advisor, what does that mean for recruitment? What does that mean for like outreach? You know, what language do you speak? I don't care. Like, come and talk to me. I'm a human being. You're a human being.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Right. And that's super transformative.
Yeah. So let's get to kind of your role again, right? Thinking about your role as a faculty member. What excites you about AI in your work as a faculty member in music composition?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's both super scary and really exciting. So like it's very easy to point to things like Suno AI or Udio AI. And there's a number of open source ones now too that write music. And I'll acknowledge this now, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but like there's like massive, like, you know, legal problems with all of this. Like, I mean, what was I trained on? Like,
right.
I'm sure my music was at some point, you know, scraped and trained, and like we need to figure that out. So like just understand my head's in that space, but we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. As an artist, you know, so those things will produce music that's probably, I don't know, as good or better than like 80% of my students I've ever taught, you know, with very little prompting. It's just like, wow, crazy. I mean, it just like kicks out a piece of music. And again, it's like anything else. It's just a bar change. Like the bar is here now, right? Okay.
Yeah.
What we know, I think, as a truth around art is that people want humanity. And this is evidenced in a lot of different places. I think like the example I use a lot is, you know, people that go to a bar or something, or a local bar, and you follow like a local band, you know, you go and listen to them, you know, you get to know the people. That's why you listen to them. It's not because they're better. They're like maybe just doing covers of somebody. It's like, go listen. If you wanted to listen to the music, just go listen to the music. Yet people still do this. We've been doing it forever because it's about the human connection, the face-to-face connection, the personal, like getting to know them and like becoming entwined in their lives and all this stuff. Everyone I know as an artist makes money by doing that, right? I don't know people that are in the like Beyonce, like, you know, like level.
Right.
Those people, I would be very nervous because if your entire existence is about a product, it's about creating a thing, or even an image, like a personality, or creating like a zeitgeist around like a thing. That's going to be really possible with an AI. Like, and people already are getting into it, and they're like, wow, I could just create my own stuff, and there's its own avatar, and they change, and it's like, you know, and it's bespoke, and, you know, it's based on my like heart rate, it changes or whatever. I mean, there's like all kinds of like crazy things, but you gotta have lots of opportunities. The other side, the vast majority of people that are working artists are not like that. They are people that are creating human-to-human connections. They are making, you know, a very specific thing. They are valued because of that inherent human relationship. And I think there are tremendous opportunities with AI to infuse into that. You know, you can go and generate a bunch of AI tracks based on, you know, you can feed in your music in a lot of these cases and get like variations. And then you can use the AI in something like Logic Pro to rip out like the drum parts and the bass part and the harmony parts, and then cut that up and then stretch that. Now you have your own instrument. And it's like, you can do all kinds of crazy fun things where you're just like using it to do something that it can't do, it would just be more human, and be more adaptive. And I'm confident, at least for our generation and my kids are 8 and 9, that's going to stay, I think, largely intact. I do have very real concerns about my kids' about where this breaks down, where my kids, my grandchildren, you know, would theoretically grow up in a world where they may not have real friends, like real friends. Like they have an embodied avatar that is a child to them, or maybe just like an unembodied like AI avatar they talk to, or in VR. Yet it's a child that is also a clinical psychologist, right? And talks to them like a kid, but has all of this like it's always leading them towards like X, Y, or Z outcome or what. I mean, like, and that's where we may change as a human race, but that's like we're talking like 3-4 decades down the line at this point. And anyone who's like throwing darts at that, like at any point, is like you're just throwing darts, right? But that's where it gets hazy to me. It's
right,
like I
because
don't
we're
know.
going to change as humans too, right? We're going to adapt, right, to those changes as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did maybe we start to wind down here? Like, do you have any specific advice for advisors or administrators who are maybe hesitant about incorporating AI into their workflows or into their systems?
Yeah, it's the first we talked about. It's not going away. So don't think, even if, again, it's a bubble that all bursts, which I think it probably is a financial bubble and it's going to burst. And like, there's going to be a whole reckoning here probably in the next few years. And that's all fine. The concept's not going away. It's just like, it's a thing. It is going to be woven into our lives. If it never got any better, it would be transformative beyond like at the level of the internet, right? So, don't rely on that, but be curious, ask questions, try things, push, ask for opportunity, volunteer to say like, I'm afraid of this, or I'm curious about this, or I love this. Can I do this? Can I help us figure out what this is? Because again, like I just was on sabbatical and feeling very punchy and like put in an application to my provost, was like, I don't know, this seems like something that we should probably be looking at. I don't have a background in this, but I'm happy to do the legwork, right? I mean, we're in this moment where that kind of like, I wouldn't say it's like hubris or like whatever. It's just like, but there's like your access to information and just like, are you curious? Do you want to do the work and help? Then you can. Again, not to like put myself in any kind of like relation to people that are actually doing research in this. Like I've like, again, people have their entire lives devoted to like deep learning and machine learning and neural nets and stuff like that's a totally different conversation. But within the area of expertise that you function, like you can exact a lot of change. And then I think to continue that local like mentality is really powerful. We're probably, I mean, there's going to be like, governmental, sort of policy that's written over time, top down, nationally, state. I think there's a tremendous amount of good that can be done locally. The local government, getting people on board with these things, understanding literacy. So if you have a relationship or any desire to work with like your, town board or your county board or any elected officials that you happen to know, to be an advocate, right, in whatever way you can. That's where the power is, and it's to not feel like you need to sit it out. Like, no, you should do it and ask and be pushy about it.
That's fantastic. I talked earlier about how I'm not an expert either, but on the advising side, the one thing that I do think about is already when I've played with, say, for example, ChatGPT, which has been the majority of my experience, right? If I want to have a better calendar, right, for meeting my caseload, I've been able to use ChatGPT to do that. If I want to develop a list of better questions to humanize a 30-minute appointment that's going to aid a student in meeting their goals and is going to make me seem more human to the student, right? It's helped me with that, right? If I want to develop an email message that's designed to better elicit a response to a student who's struggling and getting them into my office so I can help them, right? Like, AI has been useful to me in all three of those examples. And I just think that moving forward, my advice, right, to listeners of this session is exactly what you would say, right? The only way we get better at AI is to actually sit and start using AI or thinking about ways in which it could be used. And so that's been in my personal experience. It seems to be the message that you've shared, and it might be better than this dystopian 30 or 40 years down the line. We're going to look more like Wall-E. Like I'm really hopeful that we'll be able to use these tools for good at the institutional level and in the advising profession. Yeah,
there's no way to know what's going to happen, right? No one has ever known, right? Every generation has that sort of moment where they're staring into the void, and we're just doing the same thing here. This happens to be a little different, maybe because it's moving very quickly, because it's software and not as bound to hardware as other things. But right, it's a tremendous opportunity to ask those questions every day. I mean, I use this stuff all the time. And every day I'm like surprised that I didn't think of something. Like, wow, oh my gosh, that would be so great. And then you try and experiment with it. It's like, yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I've described it a lot because from a music background, it's like playing an instrument. Like you want to practice it and understand that as you first start doing it and you're getting responses, they're not going to be very good. And to not be dismissive, to say like, yeah, well, it told me all the stuff that I already know. It's like, well, duh, that was like really, yeah. I mean, I didn't need to use an AI to show me this. It's like, correct. Keep going, like keep digging further and like eke out as much as you can from it and understand that like that practice as scaling output, that it continues to get better. And what you will see is continually better. And then you'll start getting curious and creative with it. And you'll start realizing like, oh, I could use, if I asked it to do only this part and then had it iterate, I could then take this and put it in here. And like, that's where it gets really powerful because you can begin like, again, it's like as a musician, it's like you're sort of then performing, right? And you get better and better and better. And again, there's no way to know where that goes because everyone is going to see something different with it from your area.
Well, Roy, thank you so much, right? Dr.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was great.
It was great. I'm super happy to have you here. We're going to close things down. Thank you so much. And I hope you have a good holiday, Roy. It's good to see you.
You too.
Absolutely. Thanks.